Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Jim Grisanzio from the Oracle Groundbreakers team, and we're going to talk Java here tonight with Alan Zeichick. Alan is from Java Magazine and also a friend of mine from 20 years ago. Alan, how you doing?
Doing great. And it's just amazing to think that, yeah, we've known each other for about 20 years back when I was with SD Time or with Sun. And all this time later, we're still talking about Java.
Yeah, Sun's no longer here, but it kind of lives through the ecosystem. I mean, there's the people all over the place, and they're still doing Java. So I really wanted to hook up with you here and have a conversation because I wanted to talk about you a little bit. I wanted to talk about the Java, sort of the ecosystem, the community, and the technology. There's a series of pieces that you're working on that I wanted to get feedback on, and a little bit about what you see as the immediate future in Java, because you're editing, you're the editor of Java Magazine, so you're always, immersed in, content from engineers. And so let's start off with what is Java Magazine?
So Java Magazine, which started quite a few years ago, is published by Oracle, so I don't want to mislead anybody into thinking that it's not, but it is by Java developers for Java developers. That's the official tagline. My unofficial tagline is, we help Java developers become better Java developers. Our focus is on the individual who is looking to add more skills. They are looking to learn what's coming in the language and the platform and the JVM. They're looking to improve their career, trying to decide which tools to use for the next project. And some of our articles are written by folks on the Java team. Many are written by Java champions and others who are experts, book authors, and so on. It's not marketing. It's not, teasers. It's actually like an article I just finished editing. Here are pitfalls you can have when working with the big decimal class, and here's how you can avoid those pitfalls and make your currency-related calculations more accurate. That's hands-on, nitty-gritty stuff. It's not new. Big decimal's been around for several iterations of Java, but it's something that people have trouble with, and so we're addressing it.
Cool. So it's a technical publication then. It's engineer led.
Engineer led, and my first question for every author is, will there be code? And pretty much if there's no code, then we don't want it. Of course, there are exceptions. We're talking about architecture and so on, but yeah, this is hands-on. Show me the source code.
The reason I actually asked that question is because I've actually spoken with a couple of people, recently, and they brought up Java Magazine, and they said, "Oh, yeah, I tried to get this article in there, but the standards are really high, so I'm going to have to work harder." And I said, "I'm going to have to ask Alan about that." So that's actually a good thing.
We're supposed to give my personal PayPal address to help grease the skids. I don't know, but. No, and many of the articles are also, I'm not sure if the right word is peer-reviewed, but I do run them sometimes past outside reviewers. They might be on the Java team if they involve upcoming features or things that I'm not sure about, or other Java champions that have expertise. We want to make sure we get it right and that what we're doing really is practical.
Well, you mentioned the peer review. I mean, that's actually a good term because there's a fair number of engineers who have degrees in computer science, and they have PhDs as well. So it's a scientific mindset, especially when you're building software that is so important like Java. I mean, these are not trivial systems. They are in highly scalable systems doing very, very important work. And to have a set of documents that is at least somewhat peer reviewed is important. So the community has a certain standard, certain technical standard. So because that term actually came up in this conversation with this guy. So
yeah, so tell that person to resubmit, and if people have good ideas, we'll work with some. I mean, one of the interesting things about a magazine like Java Magazine is that our writers are not professional writers. These aren't journalists. These are developers. These are architects. These are testers. These are people building the Java platform in some cases. Their expertise is in that.
Right.
My expertise, I'm a former developer, but I'm now a journalist and an editor. I've been editing technical magazines for well over 30 years. Is I can help them turn their ideas into prose. That's my expertise, and that of my editing team. Their job is to be a Java expert. And so as long as they have a good idea that will help teach Java developers to become better Java developers, hey, we'll work with them. We'll make it happen.
Right. Cool. Excellent. So talk to me about some of the trends you see recently, because, I mean, you're immersed in this content, you're talking to developers, you're talking to engineers who are actually writing this platform in this language. What are some of the trends? Obviously, we have a big conference next week that's coming up. So, and there's a, release of Java 15 as well, which is on the new, well, I was going to say new release cycle. That's almost 3 years old now. So talk to me about some trends that you see, maybe some top recent articles or something.
So I'd say that there are two types of trends. One is to be moving the mass of developers from where they've been stable, which I'd say is around Java 8. A huge number of people that's where they are, that's where they're comfortable. And many of them want to move forward and become adept at using later versions of Java, currently Java 14, Java 15 about to come out. There's training. There's worried about deprecated features that are no longer supported. Are there tools there? So one trend is to be slowly helping developers move. They know that they should, that there are performance improvements, there are readability improvements in the language, are helping them move into the present from the very comfortable past. The other trend is to really help simplify the code itself. A lot of times Java is criticized because it takes a lot of code to say hello world. You're going to do a lot of setup, and some things are complicated. Trying to create some types of classes can be difficult. A lot of code, sometimes hard to go back to figure out what that code means. Readability is super important when it comes to scalability and maintenance of code. It's hard to modify it if you don't know what it means. And we've talked about Java. It's been around for a while. So people are developing code that may have been written 10 years ago by a different team. So new features in the language, as well as new practices, are helping streamline and simplify. Make something that might have taken 100 lines of spaghetti code and drop it down to 4 lines that are so much easier using some new language features. Those are among the things that I see a lot of demand for. A third trend would be taking advantage of cloud native and cloud, all types of cloud computing. When Java was created, the original Java programs were all desktop client. Java EE hadn't come out yet. Or am I supposed to say Jakarta? I get so confused. I'll just call it J2EE and get it over with. The same with embedded microcode. None of that was there. And so Java is evolving into things like microservices and functions and other stuff to take advantage of the cloud. And so a trend, I would say it's as much curiosity as it is practical development, is learning and understanding how to do that with, say, Coherence and Helidon and other projects that are bringing these new architectures into where Java development will be going, which is off enterprise servers and into the cloud.
So, I mean, it sounds like, especially with cloud, I mean, especially with these new developers, or I should say, new developers, young developers, coming out of school, they're young, they have a different perspective, they have a different worldview. The market has changed. It's not 2000 anymore. They're embracing this. I mean, because you mentioned earlier, sort of, bringing new developers in, migrating developers up to the new technology, as well. Seems like they're embracing it, right?
They are embracing it. And it's funny to think that, gee, why aren't all these developers just learning Python? Why aren't they all just learning JavaScript? Well, they are learning that, but they're seeing that Java is very relevant. It's evolving. If you look at companies and what they're hiring, Python and JavaScript, but they're hiring Java. If they're Microsoft Shop, of course, they're hiring C#. But Java, if you're a Java developer, you'll always get a job. But what I think is interesting is that, in the 25 years that Java has been evolving, so too have the developers creating Java and teaching it. Well, I guess they'd be teachers teaching Java. This isn't a case where, James Gosling, who one of the creators of Java, is there as the gatekeeper saying, that's not what I had in mind for the language. Java is being led by young people. And Venkat, who I was talking to recently, brought that up. He was talking about the fact that his children, his teenagers, are programming in Java, and he loves sitting next to them and seeing what they're building. And they're using features that he hasn't even adopted yet, because they're coming into a clean, and they look at Java as it is, not Java as it was.
I see.
And
so that really gets to a different mindset. I mean, that really gets to the fact that if they're coming in clean, they just have a clean slate, and they don't have that legacy, so they're helping to create the future.
That's it exactly. And they're embracing it, and they're demanding, they're looking, for example, as I said earlier, that at some of the stuff in Java, they're saying that's too verbose. It's unnecessary. I want a simpler way to do this. I don't want to use 80 lines of setup code to get to my 4-line loop. I don't want to do that. Make that easier. And the language evolves to accommodate that. In some cases, using some of the same techniques that have been developed with other languages. Not that we're copying, not that Java is copying, but we're all getting on the same trends. We all see the same demand, just like every car today has a touchscreen. It's not like they're all copying the first car with a touchscreen. It's that all the car designers see the same need, and they're all accommodating it.
Right. You mentioned Venkat, and that's also something I want to get into here, because I have come to realize that you actually just spoke to him, and this is a part of a series that we're working on that we've been discussing recently, talking about just the issues that we're talking about here: the vibrancy and the renewal of the technology and of the community. Yes, it's a very mature community. It's been around for 25 years, which is necessary when you're building software that is this sophisticated. But you can't obviously live in the past, like you mentioned, that the young kids are getting involved, and that is normal process of how a community functions, how an open source, or at least a healthy open source community functions. And so I understand that Venkat was your first interview, and this is a piece that's going to come out next week, right?
That's right, and it's always a pleasure talking to Venkat. Who is an Agile developer. He lives in Colorado. He is just so excited. I mean, anytime that you need coffee, but you're out of coffee, just call Venkat, and then you won't need the coffee anymore. He's like that. And, we had an interesting conversation. We were talking about Java at 25, but as we both reminisced, 25 isn't that old. C++ is 35 years old. When I started in this business, I was teaching Fortran and COBOL, and I was programming in PL1. So in that sense, Java is also very young and still growing. And what's unique about Java, and Venkat reminded me of that. You know, he didn't need to, but he did. Is that when people were developing JavaScript or they were developing Fortran, they were developing a language. When the Java team built and still builds Java, they're not building just a language. They're building a language ecosystem, a programming ecosystem that has a language, but also a planned runtime environment. It has tools, it has libraries, it has all sorts of things, but it's not just a language. And by having the entire ecosystem move forward, and this is what makes Venkat really excited, is that it could all keep up. You can keep evolving Fortran or C++ all you want, but you're just changing a language.
Right.
As you evolve Java, you're evolving everything. And there's nothing else. There's nothing else like it. There's nothing else that has a whole ecosystem and a language and runtimes and tools that all move forward kind of in lockstep, embracing new concepts and, you know, keeping up with what real world developers want.
I actually met Venkat about 2 years ago or so in India at an Oracle Code event. And I interviewed him. You know, we streamed it live. You know, back when we used to go to conference in the olden days, we used to do these things together physically in the same room. But I had never met him before, and you know, it just really struck me how friendly he was and how articulate he was. And after we were finished with the interview, it was a subject matter that I was particularly interested in. It was, you know, developer, you know, productivity, you know, issues. And because you mentioned the 80-line, you know, code there, you know, actually a little bit earlier. I was really struck by, you know, the number of people who came up to him to just talk, right? And then had the time he gave them. You know, I was just observing this over in the corner as I was doing other interviews, and he had this circle around him. He gave people an enormous amount of time. And I was always very, very impressed with that. Gosling does that too, and a few others as well. Not everybody in technology is so generous with their time sometimes, you know, with the bigger, you know, more well-known people. It was an extraordinary thing to see. And so I'm glad he's your first, you know, guest, you know, for this series. What other things are we going to be addressing in the series coming up? And this is going to be like once a month or so, loosely, right?
Yeah, about once a month-ish. You know, everything is ish. We're going to be talking to a lot of different people, and we'll be talking to members of the Java team, and I hope to do some of them as on-camera interviews. I'd like to get some of them in front of a whiteboard and have them draw out some of the things that they're talking about. We'll be talking to some corporate developers. You know, I can't really say who they are in advance, but they will be from companies that very likely many of you will have heard of, that will be interesting about what they do and what they're building. We'll be talking to some teachers, people who are currently teaching Java, not at the university level or an additional university level, but also high school. And I really hope to get some high school kids. We have some tremendous, again, this is going to be a little harder with Zoom, but they're probably better with Zoom than we are. That probably they can give us some pointers while they're at it.
Yeah.
You know, they're building amazing things. And just as an example, I don't know if we'll get Venkat's son on, but Venkat was telling me that his son, who's I believe 16, is building a simulation of a prosthetic hand to be controlled by a smartphone app, and all the code is Java. And there's a kid who was taught himself, oh yeah, okay, he's got a dad who can help. But Venkat swears that he had nothing to do with it. So I'll take him at his word that these kids are doing amazing things, and self-taught is just phenomenal. Another conversation I had recently, not for the series, but maybe we'll bring him on, is a guy who he's 25 years old and Java's 25. That's why I talked to him. He does YouTube tutorials for people who want to learn Java.
Wow. And
hundreds of thousands of views of his tutorials. I mean, just those are the sort of people we'll be talking to.
Excellent, excellent. You mentioned the Venkat's kid and have creative and self-taught. I remember last year when we went on the Oracle Groundbreakers India Yatra tour, we went to 6 or 7 or 10 cities. It was mind-numbing. It was really an incredible experience. But at each stop, at each conference, this is an all-day conference, basically, one, at each city. The parents would come, the fathers or mothers would come, to participate in the conference. If they had kids, they'd bring their kids, because we had like a kid hacker session, for the kids as well. So the kids would go off in the corner for the day, and they would have a series of instructions. And then they would present back to the larger group at the end of the day. I never felt so small in my life listening to these kids present. Some of these kids were 10 years old, 14, 15, 16, up into the teenage years. And they're talking about autonomous databases and hacking kernels and virtual machines. And I just felt this big. It was really incredible
that
to
is
see.
Awesome.
So it wasn't only the fact that they we're talking about, technology, right? With such fluency, but their confidence presenting to a bunch of adults was really palpable. It was very interesting. And I commented at the time, I don't know why this was, but perhaps they just are so confident in what they did, and they would just, so into it, that there was no nervousness with presenting, just absolutely fantastic. So it sounds like an exciting series coming up. We'll get a little like a smorgasbord of people, lots of text, maybe do some interviews like this. Like, as you mentioned, you get some whiteboard sessions, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. We have a loose framework for it, but the focus is on the vibrancy of the technology and the community, and highlighting basically all these things. So yeah, next Tuesday, what are you going to be doing?
Well, I'm going to be watching Zoom, and I think there's some Java stuff coming out. It's interesting, but one of the things about being in the publishing business, which I've been in for a very long time, is that we live in the future. So while on Tuesday we're going to be talking about Java 15, guess where my head is right now? Java 16.
Yep.
And we're already planning out what we're doing for that, and talking to the people behind the JEPs, and so it's going to be exciting. And the one thing, those kids that you met in India, one of those 10-year-olds, could you get one to come over to my house and maybe make my VCR stop blinking 12? I need some help there.
Yeah, we're really showing our age, because mine did that for years, All right, Alan, good conversation. Thanks so much for coming by, giving us a little bit of a preview of what you got working there. And for you guys out there, next Tuesday is Oracle Developer Live Java. Last month was database. This month is Java. Next month is MySQL. And then after that is cloud. And that'll wrap it up for the year. And I will put a link to Alan's article in the description below after it's out next week. This video will be out actually today, but I'll update the description to add that link in there. And Alan, I'll talk to you next month, right?
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Jim.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. We'll talk to you later. See you guys later. Bye-bye.